play from the start.
Staring at my screen, I'm tired and a little lonely. Mr. Muskie says some shit that left so angry. Twitter wars and Gaza, man, it's overwhelming. Maybe that's how life becomes when...
In 2025, the R-rated American dystopia The Long Walk crawled over screens rather unnoticed and made, despite mostly incomprehensible to me, positive reviews after 2 weeks less than its $20 million costs in the US spec, which means it bombed. It is based on Stephen King's sixth same-named 1979 novel in Germany, Death March, published under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. Like Bachman's The Running Man, it's one of my all-time favorite books. See, and also for all the other countless Stephen King adaptations, the same-named retrospectives. In the almost exclusively chronological narrative told from the perspective of the main character Garrity, there are, apart from his thoughts and direct speech, no subplots. It also represents an allegory of the senselessness of war, written during the US war of aggression in Vietnam, and the many naive and clueless, especially because of their youth, who then, as now, surrender themselves to a here state-owned power with false promises and allow themselves to be sacrificed for whatever. The march represents, in my view, life itself and essentially never ends. The constant overcoming and never giving up. There's no story I think about more often, and the only Stephen King book now for almost 40 years that is still in my possession. In a dystopian future, the United States is controlled by an authoritarian military regime. Under the leadership of the Major, a so-called long walk is organized annually in which 50 male youths, 18 and older, must walk until there is only one survivor. If participants fall below the minimum speed of 3 miles per hour, they are shot after 3 warnings, much like the YouTube strike rules. Accumulated warnings are deducted after 1 hour of walking without incident. On YouTube, by the way, after 3 months of ass-kissing. The winner, in addition to a life of luxury, also receives the granting of any wish. During the march, the young people nevertheless develop friendships, knowing full well that every surviving competitor poses a threat to them.
Man-made virus, watch some millions die. Biggest profit of their lives. Here's inflation, that's your prize. This is Carmageddon. Turn on the news and eat their lies. Kim or Kanye, pick a side. Cancel culture, what a vibe. This is Carmageddon.
The movie is by Francis Lawrence, also responsible for all the Hunger Games sequels, which is why, unlike in the original, but just like the districts in his Hunger Games, the walker now represents their states. Where similarly to here, in the future, young people must fight each other until the last man standing. But they are not in a sporting competition, but with weapons. And also don't volunteer, they are forced to join, just like with the mandatory military service. The nearly 2-hour snore walk is, in my opinion, far too conventionally staged. Except for the running time, most of the names and a few events obviously doesn't stick to the original. Some people are missing, like Scram with his pregnant wife, Garrity's girlfriend, the Native American siblings, etc. But instead cooks up its own agenda and is only loosely based on it. Just enough to fool most simpletons into thinking it's the book story, where more, namely 100, some of them children 13 to 18, start at an admittedly unrealistically higher speed, namely 4 miles per hour, and quite a few more spectators along the way. They cross practically every village. There the military is also much more present, and not just a few figures like here. Walker don't have gay speedometers on their wrists, and they spread out much further along the course. Most of the time the ending can't even see the tip. Hardly anyone looks like their counterparts in the book, and many behave differently and have different backgrounds. There are also countless differences in the proceedings, such as the executions. There are often more soldiers involved, the dead bodies aren't simply left there to rot, etc., and in the dialogue. For example, the major in the book isn't such a garrulous chatterbox who constantly talks the participants' ears off, or has personally shot Garrity's father in front of his eyes or someone else, or generally fires random shots like a cowboy. Luke Skywalker is completely miscast. The silly show he puts on here has absolutely nothing to do with the original. Anyone who reads The Long Walk unavoidably becomes a participant himself and never leaves, while in the movie you just watch, and at the same time constantly checking your clock to see when this rather uninteresting thing, in the end just a boring, usual revenge story with horribly inappropriate small c score, will finally be over. The much more brutal original story, there's also a sex scene which in my opinion only works in the book, also contains ultra gore. There Garrity doesn't sacrifice himself, so that McFreeze, actually only among the last 3, wins. Wishes for a gun and action hero style shoots Darth Hamill, who's supposed to represent our current dictator I guess, completely unmolested and without any consequences. Clearly the final solution of the Hollywood champagne socialists fascists for everything. In my opinion, the book is far too extreme and depressing for a mainstream audience, since it's neither about heroes nor villains. Everyone loses in the end. Even the supposed arch-villain, namely as seen in the movie his son, who in the original was forced to participate by the Major, but unlike in the so-called adaptation, doesn't start out sick and therefore gives up, but rather dies last. Actually the most interesting character in the book, who probably didn't fit into the agenda of the frauds who made this piece of shit. In the original, at some point the walkers are so exhausted that some of them seem to hallucinate, including our protagonist. After his completely unexpected victory, he ignores the Major and simply keeps running towards a black figure, which he had already noticed before. Personally, I suspect it was after his death from exhaustion, which in my very personal interpretation doesn't necessarily occur after the supposed victory, but perhaps even earlier. Comparable to the resolution in Jacob's letter from 1990.